name is Manfred Helber. I'm a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional in the category Cloud and Data Center. Before we speak about Azure Stack HCI, let's speak a little bit about hyperconverged infrastructure as an architecture. Because many traditional systems in the market still are based on traditional SAN systems combined with storage fabrics, hypervisor systems, network appliances, and switches. The great thing about an hyperconverged infrastructure is that we are focused on industry standard servers, where we will be able to use the latest available industry standard technology, things like NVMe, RDMA networks, persistent memory modules. And the storage part is provided by a software-defined storage architecture. And additionally, we usually have a software-defined network layer, and the compute is also provided. So the virtualization for our virtual machines, for our containers, is also provided on this industry standard servers. So there are many Azure Stack HCI solutions in the market. In my opinion, one of the most interesting solutions, and a solution that has a lot of capabilities we will see in the future, is Azure Stack HCI. Azure Stack HCI is the HCI operating system from Microsoft. With Azure Stack HCI, we can start with 2 nodes with local drives, because what we have seen in this hyperconverged infrastructure in the previous slide, there is no storage system, no SAN system. So the local drives of these servers here, of these industry standard servers, are used to build a high available software-defined redundant storage. In this smallest implementation with only 2 nodes, we can start with 4 flash drives in each server, or in a hybrid configuration, 2 flash drives and 4 hard disk drives. This is a great start, high available, fully redundant for smaller companies, for branch offices. We have the nested resiliency so that we can survive 2 simultaneous storage failures. So if, for example, one server is completely down and the second server loses a hard drive, this could be survived by a 2-node cluster configured with the nested resiliency. For sure, we can scale. We can scale up to 16 server nodes, up to 4 petabytes of storage. So it's a really, really high scalable system. And we can have several of these 16-node clusters if one of these huge clusters is not enough. The hypervisor that is used in Azure Stack HCI is HyperV. HyperV is very, very powerful because Hyper-V supports Windows operating systems, Windows client systems, also previous Windows Server systems, and many, many Linux distributions. So Hyper-V is also perfectly optimized for Linux workloads. In our Azure Stack HCI video series, we are using most of the time the Windows Admin Center for administration, a graphical tool that works web-based. Everything can also be configured with the Windows PowerShell. We have a powerful scripting engine, and if you prefer to script your administrative tasks, you can use the Windows PowerShell. The Hyper-V Manager and Failover Cluster Manager can also be used for some traditional tasks. And from these tools, we can see here, the only one that has to be licensed extra is the System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So Windows Admin Center is for free. Windows PowerShell is included in the OS. Hyper-V Manager and Failover Cluster Manager is included. System Center Virtual Machine Manager is an additional license. System Center Virtual Machine Manager is licensed via the System Center suite. When we look at the 3-server configuration, I mentioned we can start with 2 servers. Here we can see a 3-server configuration. Then one of the advantages of the hyperconverged infrastructure in Azure Stack HCI is that we can build a hybrid solution. If we run a hybrid solution, then the flash drives are used for cache and the hard disk drives are used for capacity. It's also possible to use flash drives for cache when we, for example, combine NVMEs with SSDs. In this scenario here in the middle, we have the situation that the NVMEs are for cache and the SSDs are for capacity. For sure, you can also work NVMe only. You can work with SSDs only. You can combine the NVMEs with the hard disk drives or the SSDs with the hard disks, or we can also run a 3-tier configuration, but actually I don't know any OEM partner that provides a 3-tier configuration in the market. So important about this slide is to keep in mind that all servers in the cluster need an identical storage layout. So it's not possible to have one server with the configuration 1 and another server with the configuration 2 and another server with the configuration 3. So these are different configuration options we have, and if we decide for one, each server must be configured with exactly this layout. For sure we can add drives, this is possible. We can add servers, this is also possible, but it's not possible to mix these configurations. You can see an OR here between. Decide for this, or this, or this. This is always the minimum configuration. You can put in a server maybe 24 NVMEs, or if you have a server that supports 28 NVMEs, you can put in 28 NVMEs. So you can put in several NVMEs, several SSDs, hard disk drives. There are some recommendations regarding the relationship between cache drives and SSD drives, but you're relatively flexible regarding the storage layout. When we think about cache in the solution 2 and 4 and 5 and also 6, then often customers are afraid about losing data if there's a failure in this cache. In Azure Stack HCI, we have the situation that we have a redundancy across the servers that includes the cache. So here we have 3 servers, or 3-node Azure Stack HCI configuration. And with this 3-way mirror here in the 3-node cluster, we have the situation that an extend, so storage spaces direct, divides the data that is written to extends, and each extend that is written here writes 1 copy to the server 1, a second copy to the server 2, and a third copy to the server 3. So 3 copies of the data, full redundancy, also in the cache layer. The technologies I already mentioned, one name of a technology here, are HyperV, Storage Spaces Direct, and Software-Defined Networking. This is important to understand because these technologies are included in Azure Stack HCI and in Windows Server 2022 Data Center and also 2019 and 2016 Data Center. Storage Spaces Direct was introduced with Windows Server 2016. Azure Stack HCI came later. So there are many misexplanations and misunderstandings in the market. I often hear, okay, here we are using Azure Stack HCI, here we are using Storage Spaces Direct. This is not the correct wording because Storage Spaces Direct is the technology And if we are building a hyper-converged infrastructure with Microsoft technologies, we are always using storage spaces direct in Azure Stack HCI or in Windows Server 2020 Data Center. So you should always use the correct wording. We're using storage spaces direct in Azure Stack HCI or storage spaces direct in Windows Server 2022 Data Center. We are building a hyper-converged infrastructure with Azure Stack HCI, or we are building a hyper-converged infrastructure with Windows Server 2022 Data Center. So there are differences in the feature set between Azure Stack HCI and Windows Server Data Center. This is absolutely important to know, but the technologies are included in both operating systems. Yes, Azure Stack HCI is also an operating system. And the Windows Admin Center is the tool for management both of these operating systems. So when we have a more detailed look on these two options to build a hyper-converged infrastructure with Microsoft technologies, then we have already heard HyperV is included in both of them. Software-defined storage, the S2D storage spaces direct, is included in both of them. The software-defined networking is available in both of them, in Azure Stack HCI and in Windows Server Data Center. Regarding the licensing, it's important to know that Azure Stack HCI does not include virtual Windows Server usage rights. So it's the operating system, it's the hyper-converged infrastructure. If we want to create and run virtual machines on this platform, we have to add some additional licensing. There are different options available. There are options available based on the subscription in Azure, but we can also use automatic virtual machine activation in combination with the OEM licenses. In Windows Server 2022 Data Center, we have unlimited virtual Windows Server usage rights. So we license the host and we have the unlimited virtual usage rights. When we look at this part here in comparison of these two stacks, many customers ask, okay, when I'm planning to build a hyper-converged infrastructure with Microsoft, when I don't have virtual usage rights here, and I have to buy additionally Windows Server license, where I usually use the Data Center Edition to receive unlimited virtual usage rights, why shouldn't I use the software-defined stack out of Windows Server Data Center? And you are absolutely fine to do it. You have the HyperV here, storage spaces direct, the software-defined networking. It works great. But in Azure Stack HCI, we have HyperV plus additional features. These are features like GPU pooling, CPU compatibility levels. We have storage spaces direct plus. These are things like stretch clustering, thin provisioning, and so on. We have software-defined networking plus, also additional features here. And we have the connectivity to Azure. And this is the focus of this video series with the Hybrid Administrator, where we focus on these hybrid services. Yes, we can also add optionally hybrid services to Windows Server and to Windows Server based hyper-converged infrastructure solutions. But in Azure Stack HCI, we have the situation that Azure Stack HCI behaves like Azure. This is Azure on premises. This means we can also use exclusive Azure services on premises. And you will see if you review all the video modules, the possibilities with Azure Stack HCI are really great. So they are great already today, and Microsoft promised us that we will see many hybrid features in the future on Azure Stack HCI. The management layer is the same. It's Windows Admin Center for both sides, for Windows Server and for Azure Stack HCI. Windows Server can be optionally connected to Azure and can consume some hybrid services. Azure Stack HCI is the real hybrid operating system, is the real hybrid hyperconverged infrastructure. So when we look at the naming of the product, yes, Azure Stack HCI is an hyperconverged infrastructure. This is one part of the solution. But Azure Stack HCI is also Azure. And this is, in my opinion, for the future, the most important part of this product, because many customers are already working with cloud-based services. But there are also many customers that had a look at cloud-based services that decided to keep their services on premises in their data center because of network connectivity, latency, placement of the data, regulatory requirements, and so on. And now with Azure Stack HCI, we have a solution where we can use Azure services in our data center on a hyperconverged infrastructure. Yes, this is provided also by Azure Stack HCI, but I think the main successor here is the option to use these Azure services. When we want to start with Azure Stack HCI, it's important to understand that we need servers with a specific configuration, and there we will find Azure Stack HCI certified solutions. You will find the solutions on microsoft.com/HCI from different vendors. We have nearly 200 or more than 200 certified Azure Stack HCI solutions in the market. There are rack servers, there are tower servers, there are servers with special form factors. You will find servers for nearly every scenario in the market. My strong recommendation is to use a certified system. I often have contact to partners or customers that try to build an Azure Stack HCI solution based on not certified hardware. And the risk to run into issues there is absolutely there. And the recommendation is really to use these systems because they are validated and certified based on a standardized test suite provided by Microsoft. The name of this test simulator is Private Cloud Simulator. So these servers are tested from the OEMs over several days to ensure that we have the compatibility here with the Azure Stack HCI operating system. When you have selected an Azure Stack HCI certified solution, here you can see the certified solutions from primeLine Systems. This is the OEM that provides this video series to you. Then you can start installing the Azure Stack HCI OS, or you can already order these nodes with a pre-installed Azure Stack HCI operating system. So the physical hardware will run in our data center, in our physical on-premises location, and we will install Azure Stack HCI on this server, so it's a bare metal operating system. Azure Stack HCI looks like Windows Server regarding the setup, but the result of the installation is a server core installation. So we have this reduced graphical user interface with reduced footprint, less patches we need, but absolutely suitable for what we do with this hyperconverged infrastructure solution. And at the beginning of this module, we have heard that we can manage this operating system with the Windows Admin Center with a web-based graphical management tool. So the Azure Stack HCI cluster has to be registered in Azure. Because it is Azure, it will create a resource in Azure, and we will be able also to manage resources via the Azure portal. We can use the Windows Admin Center, we can use the Azure portal. So we have different options to manage this cluster, for sure, also PowerShell and so on. The registration to Azure is also required for the subscription-based billing, because the Azure Stack HCI is licensed based on the physical cores. The price for each physical core is $10 per month. Only active physical cores are charged. So if you have this cluster here, 3 servers, let's imagine you have 10 active cores in each server, then you have 30 cores and you have $300 license costs, but you don't have any upfront costs. You don't have to buy Azure Stack HCI. You just download it from Microsoft, or you order a pre-installation from your OEM where you are not charged for the bits and bytes. So the pricing for Azure Stack HCI is based on the cores you are running in your Azure Stack HCI cluster. It's not required that you have a 24 hours, 7 hours a week connectivity to Azure. I would recommend to you to have a stable connection, because we can use a cloud witness for our cluster. We can use monitoring from Azure. We can use things like Azure Virtual Desktop. And for sure, for these services, I need internet connectivity. But if you have a disconnected internet connection, if your internet connection is disconnected and you cannot reach Azure, then your on-premises services will stay up and running for 30 days without any limitation after 30 days. So if you are disconnected for more than 30 days, then you will never see an outage for your workload on premises, but you will not be able to create new resources like new virtual machines and things like this. So connectivity is required. It's not usable in a complete disconnected scenario, but it's okay if you are sometimes disconnected, because as soon as the internet connectivity is back, Azure Stack HCI reconnects to Azure. Azure Stack HCI is a subscription, so updates are provided automatically via the update mechanism. The initial version of Azure Stack HCI was the version 20H2. It was published in 2020. The next version was 21H2. It was published in 2021. And the next version, based on the information we will find in docs.microsoft.com, so this is an original screenshot, this graphics from docs.microsoft.com. This says the next version will be 2020H2. This will be published this year. And we have 6 months to install this new version. So this version was published in October 2020. And now we have the situation that we have the version 21H2. This was published in 2021. And when we started with 20H2, now this version was published and we have plus 6 months till we upgrade to this version. The upgrade is very easy if you have a standard optimal configured Azure Stack HCI cluster. You have an update module where you can run cluster-aware updating, where you move automatically from the previous to the latest version. Maybe you have some side effects. Maybe you are using System Center Virtual Machine Manager and you have to wait for the next version of System Center Virtual Machine Manager to also be compatible with the next version of Azure Stack HCI. And maybe you are using a specific backup software, third-party monitoring or things like this. Then you have this additional time before you upgrade to the next version of Azure Stack HCI. It will be the same with the 20H2 and so on. These updates are for free. Each next version from Azure Stack HCI is provided as long as you have a subscription. And we also have these monthly updates. So every month there's a new update for Azure Stack HCI. And we have updates for the extensions for Windows Admin Center. The extensions are these packs that ensure that we can manage all the new features. So a few days ago, there was an update that provided the Azure Resource Bridge for Azure Stack HCI. It's now visible in the Windows Admin Center and in the Azure portal. And these new features you will see on a monthly basis when these updates are provided. For Azure Stack HCI, you can also subscribe for Azure Support. So the Azure Support plans start with $29 per month. This is for development use. Starting with $100 per month, you have production support. $100 is not per node, not per cluster, it's per customer environment. So if you have 4 clusters, you pay $100. If you have 10 clusters, you pay $100. If you have 1 cluster, you also pay $100 if you want to receive the Azure support. I would always recommend you to have this Azure support plan. Now let's come to this hybrid part, because the hybrid capabilities are really the huge benefit of Azure Stack HCI. So part of the Azure Hybrid features are the Azure workloads and benefits we already have on Azure Stack HCI or we will receive in the near future. So Azure benefits and hybrid services are things like Azure Edition, specific Windows Server Edition with extended functionality, free extended security updates for our operating systems we run on this cluster. We receive extended security updates without additional costs if we move our workload to Azure or to Azure Stack HCI. So even when the extended support ended, we can extend our support with up to 3 or 4 years with the free extended security updates. We can purchase our licenses via subscription in Azure via pay-as-you-go. We can use the Azure Kubernetes services. We can use platform as service services. This is actually in preview. Azure Virtual Desktop is in preview, and Azure Virtual Desktop is really, really great to provide an VDI, an RDS scenario, or an Windows 11 multi-user scenario, that's exclusively available in Azure Virtual Desktop. Azure Virtual Desktop is available in the public data centers in Azure, and in the near future also on Azure Stack HCI. It's already a public preview, so you can test it there if you want. But we also have Azure management and governance features, things like monitoring via Azure. We'll see this in a later module. Management via portal and Azure portal, we will also see this. Auto manage in the future, that audit and remediates your OS. Disaster recovery for Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup. PowerShell modules and much more. I mentioned this Azure Resource Bridge to optimize the placement of resources on premises when you distribute services via the Azure portal on your on-premises Azure Stack HCI. And Microsoft also provides a lot of Azure infrastructure innovations to Azure Stack HCI that we exclusively have there, not in Windows Server, not in Windows Server with storage spaces direct, but in Azure Stack HCI, things like thin provisioning, kernel soft reboot in the near future, also part of the integrated systems, GPU support for clustered VMs, secured core server, dynamic CPU compatibility, network advanced configuration, and so on. So really, really many extensions from the platform, from the management, and from the workloads. When we come back to this comparison I provided to you regarding the licenses, unlimited in Windows Server Data Center, no virtual rights in Azure Stack HCI. Then the question is how to receive these virtual usage rights. What is the best way? And there are different choices. You can use the Windows Server subscription to use an automated activation, or you can bring your own license and configure automatic virtual machine activation, where the machines are also automatically activated, but based not on a subscription, but based on your perpetual license you buy from your OEM, or you buy with your volume license. This is also possible. Independently, which licensing path you choose, you take the advantages of moving your workload to Azure Stack HCI. And one of the huge advantages is that you receive the extended security updates for Windows Server, not only 2008 and 2008 R2, but in future also 2012 and 2012 R2. You also receive the extended security updates for SQL Server. This means if an operating system reaches the end of the support date, you usually do not get any updates, no security updates, no hotfixes from Microsoft. If you are a volume licensing customer with software assurance, you can pay additional money to receive extended security updates for the first year, for a second year, for a third year. But you have to pay for it. It's not cheap, this extended security updates. When you move your workload to Azure, and Azure Stack HCI is Azure, but on premises in your site, in your data center, then these extended security updates are included. You don't have to pay extra for them. You pay for Azure Stack HCI based on the physical cores per core per month. You have to ensure that your VM workload is licensed in using the subscription or adding data center licenses. You could also add standard licenses and stack them, but if you have in your cluster 8 or more virtual Windows Server machines, usually the data center license is the optimized option. And the extended security updates are provided by the Azure benefits. We will see later a module where I show to you how to activate the Azure benefits. For Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2, we actually have the situation that there's also a fourth year. So we have one additional year here for Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2 regarding the support. Extended security updates is one of these huge benefits. When we look at the exclusive features of Azure Stack HCI, we have a long list. Not everything is in this list, only the highlights, in my opinion. Stretch clustering, this is a storage spaces direct feature. Thin provisioning is also a storage spaces direct feature in Azure Stack HCI, but exclusively there. It's not in Windows Server. Storage Spaces Direct is in Windows Server, but not these two extensions here for Storage Spaces Direct. Extended security updates is one of these hybrid benefits. And configuration wizard to configure Windows Admin Center. The GPU support for clustered VMs is exclusive in Azure Stack HCI. The CPU compatibility mode is exclusive in Azure Stack HCI. Support options, I mentioned this via Microsoft Azure. The validated systems, the Azure Stack HCI certified solutions from the Azure Stack HCI catalog. We have this deep Azure integration we will see in several modules here in this video course. The deployment of VMs via the Microsoft Azure portal, the support of the Azure Resource Bridge. And in previous, actually, Azure Virtual Desktop for Azure Stack HCI to bring Azure Virtual Desktop to our on-premises location. And we will see many more of these Azure features on premises in the future.